I, 28F, have been living with my grandmother Roberta, 82F, for the past 6 years, ever since she had a severe stroke that left her partially paralyzed on her right side. None of my other relatives wanted to step up, not my Uncle Tom, 55M, who lives just 30 minutes away, not my Aunt Sarah, 52F, who's always bragging about her nursing degree but never used it to help, and definitely not my parents who were too busy with their new families. Some background is needed here. My parents divorced when I was 8, and it wasn't an amicable split. My dad immediately moved in with his girlfriend, now wife, and my mom spent most of her time dating different men, trying to find herself or whatever. Neither of them had much time for a confused 8-year-old, so I ended up spending most of my time at Roberta's house. She was my mom's mother, but she never took sides in the divorce. Instead, she focused on giving me stability. Roberta was amazing during those years. She made sure I did my homework, cooked healthy meals, and always made time to listen to my problems. When I was bullied in middle school, she was the one who helped me build confidence. When I had my first heartbreak at 16, she sat up all night with me, eating ice cream and telling me about her own teenage years. Even after I went to college, I visited her every weekend. She was more than a grandmother, she was my best friend. The stroke happened right after I graduated college and was starting my teaching career. I got the call from her neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, who found her collapsed in the garden. I was the first one at the hospital, and I stayed there for 3 days straight. Tom and Sarah showed up briefly, made some sympathetic noises, then disappeared. My parents sent flowers but were too busy to visit. The doctor said Roberta would need constant care. She had lost mobility in her right side, her speech was slurred, and she needed help with basic tasks. The hospital recommended a nursing home, but I couldn't bear the thought of Roberta, who had always been so independent, ending up in one of those places. Without really thinking it through, I told everyone I would move in with her. You should have heard the reactions. Tom said I was throwing my life away. Sarah lectured me about how I wasn't qualified to be a caregiver. My mom said I was being dramatic and should let professionals handle it. My dad didn't say anything, he just shook his head disapprovingly. The only person who supported my decision was Martin, 65M, Roberta's friend and lawyer for the past 30 years. He offered to help me figure out the legal and medical paperwork. I took a teaching job at a school near Roberta's house and arranged my schedule to be home when she needed me. The first few months were incredibly hard. I had to learn everything from scratch: how to help her bathe without falling, how to make sure she took the right medications at the right times, how to assist her with physical therapy exercises. There were nights when I barely slept because she was in pain or confused. But we developed a routine. My savings quickly disappeared into medical bills, equipment, and house modifications. We needed grab bars in the bathroom, a wheelchair ramp, a special bed. Martin helped me apply for some assistance programs, but there was still a lot to pay for. I asked Tom and Sarah if they could contribute, since they both earned good money, but they always had excuses. Tom was saving for his son's college. Sarah had just bought a vacation home in Florida. The criticism from my family was constant. They said I was naive, that I was sacrificing my youth, that I should be dating or focusing on my career instead of playing nurse. Some of them even suggested I was after Roberta's money, which was ridiculous. Roberta lived comfortably but wasn't wealthy. She had her modest house and some savings, but nothing that would make anyone rich. As time went on, most of the family stopped visiting altogether. Tom would show up every few months, stay for exactly 15 minutes, then leave with some excuse about a meeting. Sarah called occasionally but never visited. She was always too busy with her yoga retreats or art classes. My parents were wrapped up in their new families and rarely called. The only regular visitor was Martin, who came by every week without fail. He would bring groceries, help me sort through medical bills, and just sit with Roberta, making her laugh with stories about their younger days. He taught me how to handle insurance companies and helped me set up a system for managing her medications. Things got harder last year when Roberta's health started declining more rapidly. She needed more care, so I had to reduce my teaching hours to part-time. This sparked another round of family drama. Tom actually called me stupid for cutting back on work. Sarah started telling everyone that I was manipulating Roberta, trying to get written into her will. My mom posted passive-aggressive comments on Facebook about people who take advantage of the elderly. The situation exploded last month when Tom made a surprise visit. He found me helping Roberta sign some papers. They were just routine medical forms authorizing her monthly prescriptions, but Tom immediately assumed the worst. He started yelling about elder abuse and how I was trying to steal Roberta's money. Roberta tried to explain, but her speech issues make her hard to understand when she's upset, which only made Tom more suspicious. Now my phone is constantly buzzing with messages from relatives I haven't heard from in years. Some are demanding I move out and let them take care of Roberta. Where were they for 6 years? Others are threatening to report me for elder abuse. Tom is talking about getting power of attorney. Sarah is telling everyone who will listen that I've brainwashed Roberta. The worst part is how this is affecting Roberta. She's upset about all the drama, which isn't good for her health. She keeps apologizing for causing problems in the family, but it's not her fault at all. She's the victim in all this, and watching my relatives attack me while pretending to care about her is making me angry. Martin says I should ignore them, that they're just showing their true colors now. He's probably right, but it's hard when it's your own family attacking you. I'm not leaving Roberta, she needs me, and I'm the only one who knows her routine, her medications, everything. But the constant accusations and threats are wearing me down. Ida for standing my ground? Update 1. I wasn't planning to update so soon, but everything has changed in the past few days. Roberta passed away in her sleep 3 nights ago. She had been more tired than usual that day, but nothing seemed seriously wrong. We had dinner together, watched her favorite game show, and I helped her to bed. She squeezed my hand and told me she loved me, just like she did every night. That was the last thing she said to me. When I went to wake her for her morning medication, she was already gone. She looked peaceful, like she was just sleeping. I called Martin first, then the paramedics. By the time Tom and Sarah arrived, Martin was already there, helping me handle everything. My parents didn't show up until the next day. The funeral was yesterday, and that's when everything went completely sideways. I was trying to keep it small and dignified, just like Roberta would have wanted. But Tom and Sarah turned it into a circus. They showed up with their lawyer, who brings a lawyer to a funeral, and couldn't even wait until after the service to start causing problems. It turns out Roberta had updated her will 6 months ago. I had no idea about this, she never mentioned it to me. She left me her house and most of her savings, which total around $400,000. It's more money than any of us thought she had. Martin later explained that she had some investments that had done well over the years, plus a life insurance policy she'd been paying into since she was young. Tom and Sarah completely lost it when the will was read. They started screaming right there in the funeral home, with Roberta's body still present. Tom was yelling about how I must have manipulated her, how there was no way she would have left everything to me unless I had forced her. Sarah was crying dramatically about how her own mother had abandoned her, rich coming from someone who couldn't be bothered to visit her sick mother for 6 years. Their lawyer, this sleazy-looking guy in an ill-fitting suit, actually served me with papers at the funeral. They're contesting the will, claiming Roberta wasn't mentally competent when she made the changes. They're saying I isolated her from the family, conveniently forgetting how they were the ones who never visited, and took advantage of her condition to enrich myself. Tom is telling everyone who will listen that I deliberately kept Roberta sick so she would depend on me. He's claiming I refused to take her to doctor's appointments. I have records of every single appointment, and that I prevented her from getting better care. I was the one begging them for help with medical bills. Sarah is spreading rumors that I drugged Roberta to keep her confused. The nurse who helped with medications has already offered to testify that this is a lie. Martin is absolutely furious. He personally handled the will update and says Roberta was completely lucid when she made the changes. He spent over 2 hours with her alone, making sure she understood exactly what she was doing. He even had a doctor examine her the same day to certify her mental competency, because he suspected something like this might happen. Yesterday, while going through Roberta's desk to find some insurance papers, I found a letter addressed to me. She wrote it the day she updated her will. Reading it broke my heart and gave me strength at the same time. She wrote about how proud she was of me, how I had become more of a daughter to her than she ever expected. She said she was leaving me the house because she wanted me to have a home of my own after spending so many years taking care of her. The letter also explained why she never told me about the will. She knew I would try to talk her out of it. She was right. If she had told me, I would have insisted she divide everything equally among the family, just to keep the peace. She knew that, and she made her decision anyway. I'm staying in the house for now, though Tom and Sarah are demanding I move out until the legal issues are resolved. Martin says I shouldn't leave. Apparently, possession is 9/10 of the law. But they're making my life absolute hell. Tom drives by multiple times a day, taking pictures of the house and everyone who comes or goes. Sarah has been calling my school, trying to spread rumors about me to the administration. They even tracked down my ex-boyfriend from college, trying to find something they could use against me. The worst part isn't the legal threats or the harassment. It's what they're doing to Roberta's memory. They're trying to paint her as this confused, manipulated old woman who didn't know what she was doing. Anyone who knew her knows that's not true. Even in her illness, even with her speech problems, she was sharp as a tack. She knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't afraid to say no to people, something Tom and Sarah learned when they tried to get her to sign papers she didn't want to sign. Martin is helping me fight this. He says we have a strong case. He has documentation of everything, including how often each family member visited, or didn't visit, over the past 6 years. He kept detailed records of who contributed to Roberta's care, basically just me and occasionally him, and who refused to help. He even has security camera footage from the times Tom and Sarah showed up unannounced, trying to pressure Roberta about money. I've been crying a lot, but not because of their threats. I miss Roberta terribly. The house feels empty without her. I keep expecting to hear her calling me for help, or waiting to hear her laugh at her favorite TV shows. But every time I think about giving in to their demands, I read her letter again. She trusted me to stand up for what she wanted, and I'm not going to let her down now. Update 2: the situation has developed in ways I never expected. Martin has been working tirelessly on the case, and he's uncovered some shocking information. 2 years ago, when I was at work and the nurse was watching Roberta, Tom and Sarah made an unannounced visit. They brought their own lawyer and tried to pressure Roberta into changing her will in their favor. Roberta never told me about this because she knew it would upset me, but she told Martin everything. The nurse who helped care for Roberta while I was teaching, Mrs. Reynolds, came forward with even more disturbing information. Tom had approached her 3 weeks ago, offering her $10,000 to testify that Roberta was mentally unstable and that I had been mistreating her. Mrs. Reynolds not only refused but recorded the conversation on her phone. She was smart enough to know something wasn't right when Tom insisted on meeting her in a parking lot instead of coming to her house. Mrs. Reynolds has been a geriatric nurse for 25 years and says she's seen this kind of family drama before, but never this blatant. She's willing to testify about Tom's bribe attempt and about how Roberta was always clear about wanting me to inherit everything. She also kept detailed notes about Roberta's mental state as part of her job, which clearly show Roberta was competent until the end. But the biggest surprise came from Sarah's daughter, my cousin Emma. She reached out to me privately last week, saying she couldn't stay quiet anymore. According to Emma, Tom and Sarah had been planning this for years. They assumed Roberta had much more money than she actually did. They thought the house was worth over $1 million because of the neighborhood. It's not, it's an older home that needs work. They had been counting on inheriting enough to retire early. Emma showed me text messages between her mother and Tom from 2 years ago, discussing how they needed to do something about me before I got my hooks too deep into Mom. They were already planning to contest the will before they even knew what was in it. Emma says they were furious when they found out about the actual amount because they'd already spent money on lawyers, expecting a much bigger payoff. Martin is building an incredibly strong case. He has records of every visit, every call, every contribution to Roberta's care, or lack thereof, from my relatives. He also has proof that they never offered to help with her medical bills, even when I was struggling to pay them. There are emails from Tom and Sarah actively refusing to contribute when Martin reached out to them for help. The most ironic part of all this? Martin says Roberta had originally planned to leave the house to me but split the savings between all of us. She changed her mind after Tom and Sarah's attempt to force her to change the will. She told Martin she couldn't trust them with any money after seeing how they behaved. The harassment has gotten worse since Mrs. Reynolds came forward. Tom has been telling neighbors that I'm paying her to lie. Sarah posted a long rant on Facebook about nurses who overstep their boundaries and greedy relatives who steal from family. They've even started harassing Martin, sending him threatening emails and filing complaints with the Bar Association, which were immediately dismissed. My parents finally picked a side, the wrong one. My mom is saying I manipulated her mother against her, conveniently forgetting that she barely spoke to Roberta in the last 6 years. My dad, who hasn't been to the house since before Roberta's stroke, is suddenly concerned about family legacy. Martin says their case is falling apart. Their lawyer actually approached him about a settlement. They'll drop the case if I give them each $100,000. I refused. It's not about the money anymore. It's about honoring what Roberta wanted and not letting them get away with trying to destroy her reputation. The stress is getting to me, I won't lie. I had to take a leave of absence from teaching because Tom and Sarah kept calling the school. But I have support. My students' parents, who knew Roberta from when she used to pick me up at school, have been bringing meals and offering help. Mrs. Reynolds stops by regularly to check on me. And Martin has been incredible, handling everything with a calm determination that makes me feel safer. Emma is paying a price for helping me. Sarah has cut her off completely. But she says she doesn't regret it. She told me she was tired of watching her mother and uncle try to profit from a situation they never helped with. She's one of the few relatives who actually visited Roberta regularly, and she says she knows I did the right thing. Update 3: the court case is finally over, and we won completely. Tom and Sarah's case didn't just fall apart, it exploded in their faces. The judge was visibly angry by the end of the proceedings, especially after hearing about their attempt to bribe Mrs. Reynolds. The most dramatic moment came when Martin played the recordings he found on Roberta's phone. She had apparently started recording conversations after Tom and Sarah's attempt to change her will. There were multiple recordings of them mocking her speech difficulties, complaining about having to visit her, and making snide comments about me. In one particularly damning recording, Sarah can be heard telling Roberta that she's too much work and that she should just go to a nursing home so everyone can get on with their lives. These recordings were from just months before they claimed she was mentally incompetent, and they clearly showed she was aware and sharp enough to document their behavior. Tom actually stood up and tried to object when Martin played them, as if he was in some TV courtroom drama. The judge shut him down hard. Mrs. Reynolds's testimony was devastating to their case. She brought 6 years of detailed notes documenting Roberta's mental state, her daily activities, and her frequent expressions of gratitude for my care. She also testified about Tom's attempt to bribe her, playing the recording she made of their parking lot meeting. Tom's face turned completely red, and his lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. Emma testified too, even though Sarah threatened to cut her out of her will if she did. She told the court everything about her mother and uncle's plans to contest the will before they even knew what was in it. She also brought text messages showing them discussing how to force me out of the house once they got control of it. The judge not only upheld the will but also ordered Tom and Sarah to pay all legal costs. He added a restraining order without us even requesting one, saying their pattern of harassment was concerning. They are now legally required to stay at least 500 feet away from the house and from me. Their lawyer looked mortified by the end. Martin told me later that this case probably ruined the lawyer's reputation in the probate court circuit. Apparently, the judge made some very pointed comments about lawyers who take cases without proper due diligence. My parents finally realized they backed the wrong side, but it's too late. I got a long email from my mom trying to apologize, saying she was just upset about losing her mother and took it out on me. I haven't responded. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Tom and Sarah are still bad-mouthing me to anyone who will listen, but fewer people are listening now. Several relatives who initially sided with them have reached out to apologize after seeing the court transcripts. I'm not interested in their apologies either. They showed who they really are, and I believe them. Martin still stops by regularly to check on me, just like he did when Roberta was alive. He's become like family, the good kind. Mrs. Reynolds visits too, and Emma comes over for dinner once a week. It's a smaller family than before, but a better one. I'm keeping the house, not because of its value, but because it's where I lived with Roberta, where we made memories together. I've started fixing it up, doing all the repairs she always wanted to do. Last week, I planted her favorite flowers in the garden where she used to sit. Sometimes I still expect to hear her calling me, or find her in her favorite chair watching TV. Those moments are hard, but they're getting easier. I miss her every day, but I know she'd be proud of how I handled everything. She'd always told me to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. That's exactly what I did. The money is mostly going into savings, though I did use some to set up a scholarship at my school in Roberta's name, for students who show kindness and compassion to others. I think she would have liked that. It's not about the inheritance anymore, it's about honoring her memory and the lessons she taught me about family, loyalty, and doing what's right. Last week, I found one final recording on Roberta's phone that I hadn't heard before. It was from the day she updated her will. She was talking to herself, probably practicing what she wanted to say to me someday. I chose the right person, she said. The only one who loved me for me, not for what I could give them. That's all I ever wanted to be, the person she knew I was.